Welcome to the Service Game, where we serve you and serve starts the story. I'm your host, IVJ, and in today's episode, I will be previewing the third Grand Slam of the year, Wimbledon. So before we get into the actual tournament, I want to talk about the tournaments leading up to Wimbledon, and I will be talking about that in the first segment of today's show, The Toss. Welcome to the first segment of today's show, The Toss. So let's just get right into the segment. The first piece of news I want to talk about is Emma Raducanu's withdrawal from this tournament because she suffered a stress fracture in her lower leg, and I think this is definitely a devastating blow for the tournament and for her, just because about 2 weeks ago, she did reach the finals at the Queen's Championship, and that was definitely a confidence boost for her, just because she did reunite with her coach, who helped her win the US Open, and it's just really unfortunate the timing of the event and her injury, just because I think she had a lot more to give, but I just wanted to point that out. And I also want to talk about the players who are continuing the boycott of the media days at these Grand Slams. So during Roland Garros, the players also did this walkout. So after 15 minutes at the press conferences, I also want to note that not all players did this. It was just most of the top-ranked players. They decided to walk out after merely 15 minutes in because they want the Grand Slams to offer them more money than what's been already offered. So basically the Grand Slams are only offering them a few percentage of the revenue they generate, so the money they make at these Grand Slam tournaments. And for other US major leagues, I will be leaving a link. I will be linking an article written by The Athletic, and I think it really just put into context how little the tennis players are earning compared to the other major leagues. But they want to just earn about 15% of what the tournaments are making. And I can leave a link for you guys to check it out, but that's just basically that. The other piece of news I want to talk about is Marketa Vondrousouva, who was banned for 4 years until 2030 for refusing a doping test. And the devastating thing about this is she actually took the test after her refusal and the results came back negative. So it's just, I think, really unfortunate. And if you guys want to go check out her statement on Instagram, she did publish a statement just saying how it was really unfortunate. She's never have had a doping problem, and it's just kind of unfair for her to receive a ban for refusing a test. But the specific statement, I think it was really impactful. You guys can definitely check it out, and as a matter of fact, I think I'll link it if you guys want to go read it. And in terms of tennis, I quickly just want to cover the tournament leading up, especially on the women's side, to the Wimbledon. So I want to talk about the Bad Homburg Open, which was won by Karolina Muchova, who beat her finals opponent after a withdrawal. So Naomi Osaka was her finals opponent, and she withdrew after being down 1-6 and 0-1. And Naomi clearly was compromised because she had her ankle taped up. But just quickly want to say that I want to give credits to both players because Naomi has never been known as a really strong grass court player. And this was actually her first ever grass court final. And I think this is already a huge accomplishment for her, even though I know that her just draw at Wimbledon is pretty challenging. But I think just even if she doesn't get a great result at Wimbledon, simply just being in a grass court final is a big accomplishment. And for Karolina Muchova, I think she's definitely one of the players everyone should look forward to watching at Wimbledon. So yeah, we'll take a break and we'll come back with the hit. Welcome to the hit. So I will be talking about just players and matches, especially first round matches that I think are worth watching, just because by the time my episode publishes, there will be a lot of first round matches that are just overall really entertaining that you guys are going to be able to watch. Sorry, that was a really wordy way of saying that. But yeah, okay, so on the women's side, some players I want to highlight, definitely first, Serena Williams. She's coming back at the age of 43 and she's playing singles and doubles. Her doubles partner will be her sister Venus Williams. So I don't know how much impact she will make in terms of both these events, but I just think definitely the mental aspect of facing Serena will be pretty challenging for some other players. Iga Swiatek, the defending champion, I think despite being the champion last year, she is just kind of under the radar, which is exactly how she was last year, I'd say. Last year there were just minimum expectations, and that turned out to be a really great thing for her because she was able to sort of fly under the radar and completely just win the tournament without anyone expecting her and without any expectations, which for her I think is definitely a good thing, because when she has expectations on her, for example at Roland Garros, she's not always necessarily just the best at dealing with these expectations and handling the stress. And Jessica Pegula, I mean, I always have high expectations for her here just because I think grass court really suit her game, and she always performs pretty well at the tournaments leading up to Wimbledon. I know last year she did lose round 1, but I don't know, I just feel like with all of the top players who maybe aren't necessarily at their best form, I think this really is a chance for her or players like her to shine, and I really do hope Pegula does well. Okay, and then I want to talk about Mira Andreeva. I think grass court definitely isn't her best surface. I think clay and hard court suits her better. However, I want to see how she handles the stress after becoming a Grand Slam champion. I know that it's two completely different surfaces, but I just think it will be pretty interesting to see how she performs here. Okay, the final women's player I want to talk about is Alex Yala, because I think some of her best results comes from the grass, and I know she has some, even though her serve is not necessarily her strong suit, I think her return game can definitely harm some of her opponents, and I know she is a potential round 2 or round 3 opponent for Iga Swiatek or Serena Williams. So this is just, I think she's definitely going to be able to make some, I don't know, just turn the draw into a little bit of a chaos, and yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, and some just round 1 matches that I want to briefly cover. So we have the first one being Serena Williams versus Maya Joint, second Iga Swiatek versus Taylor Townsend, Emma Navarro versus Paula Badosa, and just one for, I think, the chaos. There will definitely be a lot of drama. Maybe this one is not going to be that widely talked about, but Tatiana Maria versus Yulia Putintseva. Maria was the Queen's Club champion a year ago, and I think she does have a pretty strong game on grass. So yeah, and Putintseva is always just known for being herself and being really out there. So this will be a pretty fun matchup. We'll take a break and we'll come back with the men's side. Okay, on the men's side, same thing. Let's talk about players. First one being the defending champion Jannik Sinner. With Carlos Alcaraz sitting out of this year's Wimbledon, I think Sinner is undoubtedly the favorite, and the weather seems to suit him. We know that at the French Open a few weeks ago, the weather was just really, really hot, and Sinner does not deal with the heat well. So I think just the whole weather situation being nicer for him is definitely a plus, and I think he is the overwhelming favorite coming in. In terms of our second player, Alexander Zverev, I think his game is definitely not the strongest on grass, and he sort of has a similar feel with Miran Andreeva, who I don't think are necessarily just the favorites coming into this tournament, but I'm just curious to see how they will perform in terms of maybe just riding on the high of winning the French Open and coming in with just, I don't know, confidence almost to sort of just not necessarily match up by winning Wimbledon, but just to perform well and just to sort of back up their performance at the French Open. Novak Djokovic, I think with Carlos Alcaraz being gone, his biggest opponent is himself and Jannik Sinner. And with his age coming through, really just, he also needs the weather to work in his favor. And I think looking at the forecast, it will. But it's more just seizing the opportunity and realizing that it's not really going to happen that very often that either Jannik Sinner or Carlos Alcaraz is going to be absent from a Grand Slam, and his time is really just counting down. And I don't know, I think it's a really great opportunity for him to seize this chance and potentially win his 25th Grand Slam. Daniil Medvedev, I mean, for him, I think it's more just about how he will perform, because he's not really a great, especially nowadays, he's not really a great Grand Slam performer. Like, he will be performing pretty well in the leading up tournaments. Like, I remember during Indian Wells, he made it to the finals where he did challenge Jannik Sinner, and I'm pretty sure he beat Carlos Alcaraz as well. But just in terms of playing Grand Slams, I think there were pretty high expectations of him going into the previous two, but he just did not manage to match up to those expectations. Jack Draper, because he haven't played in a long time, he withdrew after suffering an injury at French Open, and this is his comeback, and he's also working with Andy Murray, so I think this will be pretty interesting. Last player, Arthur Fils, a similar story. He's also coming back after withdrawing from the French Open, and I think his comeback was definitely way more successful than Jack Draper, and I think even though we don't know how he will perform on grass, but I really do hope he matches up to how he performed after his first kind of comeback of this year. Okay, and then some first round matchups. Taylor Fritz versus Jack Draper, I think will be a really entertaining match. I mean, I think Fritz is pretty confident, but facing Jack Draper is definitely just a really, really tough round one match. Matteo Berrettini versus Stan Wawrinka. This will be Wawrinka's last Grand Slam, last Wimbledon, just because this is his last year. So that will definitely be a pretty memorable match. Marin Cilic versus Daniil Medvedev. As I said, Medvedev, even though I say that he's someone everyone should just pay attention to, I don't necessarily know. I think he's such an uncertainty. I don't know how well he will be performing, and I think despite Marin Cilic's age, he will be a pretty tough opponent for Medvedev. And then our final matchup, Casper Ruud against Hubert Hurkacz. Despite Ruud being ranked higher, he has not played Wimbledon for like 2 years straight, and he is not at all comfortable on grass. So I think I gave her catch the upper hand here, but I think that will just be a really, really long match, and I think it'll be a grind. But yeah. Okay, now we'll come to the follow-through. Not that much to talk about in the follow-through, just mainly next week we will just be talking about Wimbledon, and I do want to leave you guys off with a fun fact, which is that tennis balls were originally white and they were only changed to fluorescent yellow in 1986 so that the television cameras could track them more easily against the grass. So because Wimbledon has such a long tradition and a long history, the color of the tennis ball was changed so that they can be broadcasted more clearly at Wimbledon, and I found that pretty on theme for today's episode. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to subscribe if you're listening on YouTube, and rate my show if you're listening on other streaming platforms. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Let the serves continue. Bye.